Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to try to talk about today is part of a continuing project that you're probably already sort of aware of that I'm trying to do, which is I mean, there's this general subject of arithmetic geometry, or I think this is general subject of arithmetic geometry that lots of people think about, but I have a lot of trouble understanding their version of it. And, so I try to understand it by trying to reinvent it for myself. And so this is part of that general trend. And, but it's going to be a bit disorganized. So what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try to think about extensions of number fields and stuff like that. Think about it from a viewpoint of thinking of them as being very geometric things, geometric in some sense. So we're going to think of it as being sort of like, we're going to attempt to think of them as being sort of like torsors or principal line bundles, or possibly associated vector bundles of principal line bundles. We're going to thinking of field extensions, things like field extensions, as being geometric objects like that, but in a somewhat exotic geometric, possibly somewhat exotic geometric context. We always want to connect this to less exotic kinds of geometry, but so yeah. So that's my vague plan here, and it's supposed to connect with all sorts of other things. We're intending, like, I mean, in particular today, I really should be. I'm not sure how far I'll get in that direction, but I'm going to really try to connect this with reciprocity laws and stuff like that. So, so let me start at a semi-random place to start here, which is, let's think about the field of rational numbers, field Q of rational numbers. And let's think about quadratic extensions of this field. And we can, roughly speaking, we can classify these by associating them with the square-free integers, which could, square-free could be either negative or positive integers. And well, but part of my square-free integers, that right? That sounds like a subset of the integers, right? But of course, it may actually be. It might turn out to be better to think of as a quotient set of the integers, where you're kind of saying that multiplying by a square integer doesn't change the thing.
So they have these canonical.
They have these canonical representatives, which, yeah, so that's like, it might be some sort of evil gauge fixing, but maybe it's some sort of good gauge fixing. I don't know. There are these very canonical representatives, somewhat canonical representatives. And so I mean, there's something that's such a familiar, somewhat familiar, somewhat unsurprising fact that it might seem unclear where to go from there. But I mean, let's compare this to things like, supposing we were trying to figure out how to classify all the cubic extensions of number fields, or the cubic extensions of the rationals field. And in this case, I mean, cubic could mean various things. like maybe I should take it to mean the abelian cubic. Extensions of the rational field. And what am I trying to say? So that's not exactly the same thing, but that's very close to like thinking about the Z mod 3 torsors over Q. Just like the quadratic extinctions is a lot like thinking about the Z mod 2 torsors over Q.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Pause it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, could I ask you to
Yeah.
spell out the connection between those things and torsors? You were talking about that a little bit
Yes.
before,
Yes.
and I have a vague idea of what that's all about. I mean, so like a cube root of unity makes me imagine a triangle of cube roots of unity, or a cube root of n makes me think of a triangle of cube roots of n, and then I think of Z mod 3 acting on them.
Yeah, boy, you're actually making me realize how sloppy I've been being about a lot of this, because I think the last time I was talking about the stuff that you're talking about, I was really sort of focusing on the idea that
they're different.
Yeah, that it's something about adjoining a frame for a torsor. I mean, obviously there must be very close relationships between those two things. Maybe it's two different ways of looking at the same thing. But
can you make the ideas precise in any way whatsoever so that I can, if you latch onto it, doesn't have to be ultra precise, but it's just, sorry, you just sort of said, oh, they're like torsors.
Well, okay. So I was going to say, right. I was going to point out. I was going to point out a way in which they're not exactly like torsors, and hopefully that will give you an idea of in what way they are like torsors.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say is that if you consider in an appropriate sense, if you consider like the Z mod 2 torsors over Q, then that includes the trivial Z mod 2 torsor over Q, and that's not a field extension. That's that splits. That's
I don't even know if I know what a torsor over a field.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so you want there's all sorts of ways of thinking about it. I'll tell you my really favorite way of thinking, my current favorite way of thinking about it. There are so many good ways of thinking about it, but let me tell you my current favorite way of thinking about it. Okay.
Okay, sure.
So first of all, one of the reasons we need a sort of interesting and fun definition of a torsor here is because we're not working in like a purely topological or homotopy theory context. It's possible that the idea of a torsor may have originally, I never know the history, the true history, but it may have come from there. But here we're really talking about torsors in an algebraic geometry context. So you need something fancier. But let me tell you what my favorite definition is. So my favorite definition is basically this. Suppose you've got a group G. Well, in order for it to be a really good group in the algebraic geometry world, it should be an algebraic group. So it should probably be, well, one thing that's good enough is an affine algebraic group.
Yep.
So an affine algebraic group is a right. An affine algebraic group is actually a commutative Hopf algebra.
Yep. So it starts out being like a group object in
affine
schemes,
schemes,
but that's the same thing as a commutative Hopf algebra.
That's right. That's right. But then there's a very nice way of getting a theory, in our sense, from a commutative Hopf algebra. It's the, if I hope I'm not getting this backwards because I haven't thought about it in a while, it's the comodule category of the co-commutative co-algebra. I mean, that's really the good concept of representation of a group. I mean, people talk about all sorts of different kinds of representations of groups. Topological, unitary, blah, 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 blah. The ones I like are these ones that are really just comodules of commutative Hopf algebras. Now, probably I need to get beyond that. I need to learn more general stuff, but this is really nice stuff about what happens if you think of group representation as being synonymous with comodule of a commutative Hopf algebra.
So those are the same, just let me check that those are the same as affine schemes on which the group scheme acts. If I want to dualize what you said and make it sound more geometrical, I turn your commutative Hopf algebra into a group object in affine schemes.
Yeah, I don't think that's quite correct. I don't think that's
because the module doesn't need to be a ring. It doesn't need to be a scheme.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably all sorts of interesting things to say along the lines of what you're talking about, but I haven't thought about them in a while. At the moment, I'm going to think of it as a black box here. That it turns out there's a very nice way of getting a theory from a commutative Hopf algebra, and it's by taking the comodule category of the commutative Hopf algebra.
Sorry, are you thinking of that as the theory?
Yes, that's the syntactic category of the theory. Yes, that's the syntactic category of the theory.
I was sort of thinking of it as the models of of the theory of a group acting on something of the appropriate sort.
There's all sorts of interplay between
but you want to think of it as a theory in its own right. So it's going to be something like
it's going to be the theory of a G-torsor.
Yeah, but it's going to be a symmetric monoidal category that's enriched over vector spaces for a variable field. Are you picking a field in all this game? I know you can change your mind.
Not necessarily, but for what we'll be doing, we'll probably be working over the rationals a whole lot.
Okay. So a torsor. Okay. So what's a torsor? What's a G torsor over the rationals then? It's I think.
Well, so I'm telling you what a torsor is by defining what the theory of a torsor is. So this concept of torsor will make sense in any universe that is itself a theory in this doctrine. And right? I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to give a theory defines a concept. The concept is the models of, an instance of the concept is a model of that theory. And sometimes it could be just some crazy theory and you just don't know what it's like. But in this case, the models of the theory are a really beautiful thing. They are the G-torsors.
Okay, well you have to. Okay, so why? Okay, so you give me your second favorite viewpoint on it, so I can say, look, they're the G-torsors. Well, so far that's just like a definition.
I'm not sure I have a second favorite viewpoint.
You have lots of. Maybe you have 10 second favorite viewpoints. When I mean the problem with me, look, I'm not trying to. The problem is that when I think of a G-torsor, I think of it's like you've got group objects in some category. Yeah.
Well, so a G-torsor.
Then you can talk about G-torsor object. If you have a group object in a category, you can talk about its.
Let's think about that.
There are things that look a lot like it, but and they look a lot like a group. But these kind of torsors you're talking about, I don't even see how they look a lot like a group. I don't.
A torsor is like a principal G bundle.
Yep.
And when you say it looks like the group, what you mean is on each fiber, it looks like the group, right? So it's like a variable, and but it doesn't have a favorite base point, which means that globally, even the existence of a base point may be questionable. It may be so twisted that it doesn't have a global section or something like that.
Yep, I was talking about the other kind of torsor, but yeah, okay, I know this kind of torsor too. So the more
Well, right, but to a, to the right kind of person, to a Lovier type person, these are the same thing, because a variable thing is just the same, it's the same concept. I mean, every concept is variable to Lovier.
yep. But then the group is variable too. I mean, so yeah, so
Yes.
So I don't, yeah.
But in this case, we're not really running into that not too much. We're not really running into variable groups too much. But well, they're somewhat variable, but maybe only in this mysterious arithmetic way or something.
Okay, but anyway, so
all right, but
so
listen,
these things am I supposed to be imagining? Am I supposed to be imagining something that's like a principal G bundle, but in some sort of algebraic geometry world or arithmetic geometry?
yes, yes, but let me tell you. So think about a principal G bundle, okay? Think about a principal G bundle. And now there's something very interesting you can do with a principal G bundle, which is you can take its associated vector bundles. And what do they call that? Substitution of fibers or something like that? It's like you've got this principal G bundle where the fibers are torsors, but you just kind of use that as a guide to replace the torsors, replace the fibers that are torsors, just replace them by fibers that are acted on by G in any way.
Yep.
So you get a vector bundle.
Yeah, it's just called the associated bundle construction, as far as I know. Substitution of fibers sounds nice, but I've never heard anyone say that. Yeah. Maybe some people do, but
I thought I have heard it, but I don't know. But yeah, so the associated bundle construction, right, or particularly the associated vector bundle construction. Right. In fact, that's what we want to focus on, the associated vector bundle construction. Okay.
Okay.
So think about that associated vector bundle construction. Think of it as a functor. Think there's a functor that takes representations of the group to what? To vector
Bundles over some fixed space.
Yes. That's how you think of a principal fiber bundle, as being a model of this theory. It's this.
Say what this theory is again. Can you say what the theory is?
The syntactic category of the theory is the representations of the group. The representations of the group, the vector space representation of the group. I mean, again, you have to sharpen what you mean by what kind of vector spaces it's acting on. But notice that this associated vector bundle construction, it's not just a functor, it's a very nice kind of functor. It's symmetric monoidal. It's exactly the kind of functor you'd want to be an interpretation of theories in this doctrine, and that's what it is. But all this that works in a sort of vague, touchy-feely way in the geometric case works in a beautifully rigorous way in the algebraic geometry world. So we just sort of define a G torsor to be this right. You're used to the idea that you start with the torsor and you extract from that the associated vector bundle functor. But this philosophy it's the other way around. The associated vector bundle functor is the primary thing. It is the torsor. That's the Tanakian viewpoint towards.
I thought the associated vector bundle functor. So you've got. Let me try to say what you're saying.
Yes.
So, okay, so I'll start geometrically and I'll try to algebraicize it. So we start with this idea that we have a category of representations of a group.
Yes.
And we have a functor from that. If we fix a principal G bundle. Yeah, okay, I'm beginning to, I have to talk to understand.
Yes, sure, yes.
So to fix a So we fix a principle. We've got a group G of some ilk, topologically, blah blah blah. We've got a principal G bundle of that ilk, and then we get a functor from the category of representations of G to the category of vector bundles over the base space of our principal.
Yes.
Bundle. Okay.
Yes.
And then, so the first stage is that we like notice, hey, the category of representations of G is very nice. It's like a symmetric, monoidal, cocomplete, linear category, for example.
Yes.
And then we noticed, hey, the category of vector bundles over our chosen base space, it's also that category of that sort.
That's right.
Functor is the kind of functor that likes to go between these symmetric, monoidal, cocomplete, linear categories.
Yeah, I mean, it should be more like, quasi-coherent sheaves than vector bundles, but that's, again, that's just a.
Okay, yeah, I was still being sort of differential geometric. Okay,
Sure,
but then
yeah, maybe it should be sheaves or something. I don't know, but yeah, go ahead.
So then the first step is you say, hey, we don't just think of the principal bundle as being this thing that lets you get a hold of this functor. You say it is this functor.
That's right, because you, in a vaguely Tanakian way, you can reconstruct the original principal fiber bundle from its associated vector bundle. You can reconstruct the principal fiber bundle from its associated vector bundle functor. And when you think about it, in the right Tanakian spirit, you realize that associated vector bundle functor is in a much better way than other ways that you have of thinking of what a torsor is. This really is the essence of what the torsor is. And I can give you some propaganda for why that's true, why it's better to think of it as the associated vector bundle functor.
So let me just,
why, according to the Tanakian philosophy, it is better. Yes, go ahead.
So let me just go on one more
Yes,
step
go ahead.
of repeating what you said.
Yes.
And so like slightly cleaning up what I just said. So, okay, so instead of just talking about like a category of representations of some group, and there I was like leaving very open whether I mean a Lie group, or this group, or that group. We'll go algebraic and we'll say, well, really what I meant by group was co-commutative Hopf algebra.
Actually, commutative Hopf algebra.
Sorry. Yeah. So commutative Hopf algebra. And the point there being that the ring of functions on an affine group scheme,
yes,
or affine algebraic group, I guess, is just exactly such a commutative Hopf algebra.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. If I didn't.
And so then, yes. So then we look at the category of comodules of this commutative Hopf algebra, and that's our precise concept of category of group representations that we're going to use in this maximally.
And that really resonates with classical group representation theory that you've studied.
Yeah,
as it turns out, for some reasons, but also just empirically it resonates.
Yeah. And then let's see. So the kind of world that. Okay, so I think so I get that. One thing that's bugging me slightly is, so we had sort of said like we picked a doctrine, and I just said like symmetric, monoidal, cocomplete, k-linear categories. So how is it seems like that doctrine should you should be able to know that doctrine is especially fond of these co-commutative, I keep saying that, these commutative Hopf algebras. Like like almost like I'm not able to say it, but it seems like those are sort of like the notion of group that's like most attuned to this doctrine in some sense. I don't quite know what I mean by that.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
it just means
sort
that
of
like,
know what you mean by it, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I don't know. So maybe what I mean by it is just that like in this doctrine, the category of K vector spaces plays a significant role.
Well, okay, I'll tell you one way I can answer your question is that, I was, dying to say this before and I lost my chance, but now you're bringing it up again, so I get another chance. So
Okay.
we've been talking about commutative Hopf algebras, but there's a generalization, which in some ways is a very mild generalization, but in other ways it seems like an extreme generalization. And that is go from commutative Hopf algebras to commutative Hopf algebroids. And those also still have a good notion of the comodule category. And, their comodule categories are the theories. The comodule categories is a theory. And these theories are really nice, and they have a really good conceptual, geometric, syntactic, semantic interpretation. They are, I mean, so
are they like,
they're almost all the theories you'd ever want to deal with. At least there are almost all the theories that a relatively unadventurous person would want to deal with. And they include very stacky ones, which are these group ones that you're talking about, and very unstacky ones, which are basically affine varieties. So that, yeah, I mean, again, this theory of moduli stacks is a way of unifying algebraic varieties and algebraic groups into a certain, unifying them in a way that the level slip between them gets blurred in a funny way or something like that. I mean, so you get these moduli stacks are kind of blend between algebraic varieties and algebraic groups. Or algebraic, maybe they're more like algebraic groupoids, and you can have groupoids that are mostly made of objects. And those are the things that are really like algebraic varieties. Whereas you can have groupoids that are mostly made of morphisms. So they're really just like groups. And those are the very stacky moduli stacks, the very stacky stacks, unstacky stacks, which are really just varieties or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I really became interested in the algebraic geometry of these two-rigs, this categorified algebraic geometry. But it took me a much longer time to appreciate the fact that there's a sort of contrasting philosophy that says instead of studying this categorified algebraic geometry of two rigs, there's a contrasting philosophy that says maybe what you should really be studying is these commutative Hopf algebroids. But these, when I say these are contrasting philosophies, they are contrasting, but the great thing about the relationship between them is that there is a relationship between them, that you get a theory from a commutative Hopf algebroid by taking its comodule category as the syntactic category of a theory. And I mean, part of the great thing about this is that when we call them theories, we're trying to promote the idea that these are theories that can be axiomatized. It's like giving a presentation, a categorified presentation, the sketch of this syntactic category as a theory in the doctrine. And these sketches are supposed to say what you mean. They're supposed to, like if you want to talk about the moduli stack of I don't know, the moduli stack of vector bundles, the moduli stack of, I don't know. moduli stack of Lie algebras that are embedded in projective space or something like that. Let's say embedded in the projective space of a particular vector space. Now, why in the world do we want such a thing? I just kind of, I'm just sort of running my fingers down the keys of this piano. I'm just
Okay, that's a
saying
weird
stuff.
thing.
I've been making noise.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, good. That's a weird thing to think about, but okay, you admit it. Yeah. Okay.
Right. But, just the fact that I can say that means that I can write down a sketch of the theory, and then by the belief method, that will produce this syntactic category. So what am I trying to say? That okay, let me give you a more cliched example, but perhaps a better example. Like, let's take projective space itself, the projective space of a vector space, let's say. So you can think of that as the roughly speaking, this fine print here that I'll probably screw up if I don't work at it very hard. But you can think of the projective space of a vector space V as being the moduli stack of one-dimensional vector spaces that are equipped with an embedding into V. And all that stuff, if you do it the right way, if it's going down the right way, all that stuff of a one-dimensional vector space equipped with an embedding into V, that is all stuff that you can express in the language of the doctrine, in the syntactic language of the doctrine. And so you can create this moduli stack as just being the spectrum of this axiomatized theory that you can write down the axiomatization of. And, so there's this very interesting landscape of theories that you can create just using the syntactic language of the doctrine. But it turns out that almost all of the interesting things that you could say in this language can be said but from this alternative approach where you think in terms of commutative Hopf algebroids. And it's connected with this whole idea, sometimes when we think about the representations of, let's say, GL, the representations of let's say, instead of GL, let's say the representations of SO5 or something like that. Now, if you do it, if you think about that representation category in the right way, you can think of it as the theory of a 5-dimensional orthogonal space, meaning it's the free category in this doctrine on an object which is in an appropriate sense that parses in the language of the syntactic language of the doctrine, that is 5-dimensional in the appropriate sense. It's something like you take its there again, it's fine, but you could you can take its fifth exterior power and demand that be invertible or something. Did I say that right? Is that the way to get it to act like a 5-dimensional object? And that requirement can parse in the appropriate syntactic language of the appropriate doctrine. And so you see what I'm saying? All the things that you want to say, right? Familiarly, you would say, let's consider the space of all things that are like this, and they have this extra structure on them, and they have an extra function on them, or something like that. That geometric language of saying, saying what the points of your space are, that translate by the, Tanakian philosophy of categorified algebraic geometry into this idea of saying, let's take the theory of those things. And automatically the spectrum of that theory will be the space or the stack of those things that you're trying to describe. The stack of models, or model stack, but people call it a moduli stack of
Yeah.
models of that theory. Yeah, yeah. Okay. I may be getting dragged too much into general stuff here and repeating myself too much, but I think I'm being somewhat responsive. I was trying to be somewhat.
Yeah, no, it helps. Yeah. So anyway, so this all started when you said
Yes.
Z mod 3 torsors over Q as being a lot like there's a lot like something about the cubic extensions of Q.
Did I actually say that one out loud? That might be true. I may have said that because
you said a billion cubic extensions.
Okay, I was thinking something like that, so I may have said it out loud. But there's this case of Z mod 2.
Yeah, you started with, for some reason, quadratic ones weren't sexy enough for you, so you decided to do cubic ones. I don't know why.
Well, but we're going to really think about Z mod 2 and Z mod 3 and Z mod 4, and it's going to be related in interesting ways to quadratic reciprocity and cubic reciprocity and quartic reciprocity.
Yeah. So I still don't actually know the answer to one of my other questions.
Yeah,
my earlier questions, which was,
yeah,
can you say a bit more precisely how cubic extensions of Q are related to Z mod 3 torsors over Q? That's the question that led me to my next question, which is, what are Z mod 3 torsors over Q?
Let me do the example of Z mod 2.
Okay, fine.
Because, okay, so so quadratic extensions of Q, we're going to think of them as torsors. But again, torsor means that it's really this associated vector bundle functor, this interpretation of theories in the doctrine. So first of all, let's remind ourselves of what is the syntactic category. You know, what are the representations of Z mod 2 over Q? Now, why is it Z mod 2 over Q? Well, this probably all sorts of good reasons for that, but that's what we're doing. I mean, we're working over Q, so so, you know, what are the various ways you can think of this? Representations of Z mod 2 over Q. So I mean, you know, so you can have a linear operator A and A squared equals 1 or something like that, where V is a vector space over Q. But there are also other convenient ways to think of this, right? You can just right, because this is a nice situation, these vectors, these operators are actually guaranteed to be diagonalizable. Is that the appropriate word? They just, you know, that you can just recover, you can reconstitute V from its two eigenspaces.
Yep.
And somehow that's right. This
is why it's good that you're using 2 instead of 3.
Yeah, that's part of it, but that's why 3 is more interesting than 2.
Yeah, sure.
So
yep.
So
you can think of it as Z mod 2 graded vector spaces.
Yes, which you can think of, roughly speaking, again, slightly abusing the concept of a 2 vector space or something like that. You can think of that as a 2 vector space with a 2 element basis, so like a 2-dimensional 2 vector space or something like that.
The category of such things is, yep.
Yeah, and the basis is given by these 2 ear-reps of Z mod 2. And so let's just think for a moment about the case of Z mod 3. Okay. So in the case of Z mod 3, we still will have 2 ear-reps. I hope you might have to teach me how this works, but I think we're going to have 2 ear-reps. One of them is 1-dimensional and one of them is 2-dimensional. And you know, so it's
right, yeah.
So it's you know, so we're sort of dealing with 2 vector spaces over the rational numbers, and just like you were teaching me, or we were teaching each other actually, about two vector spaces over the real numbers, and how there were three kinds of basis elements, the ones that have, the three different division algebras. But here we're working over the rational, so we have a lot more division algebras that we could wear. In particular, we have a lot of commutative division algebras. But I guess we also have a lot of non-commutative division algebras too. I don't know. I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, I think so. I still keep forgetting this, but this is the Albert Brouwer Hassan Noether.
Right. So this is one of the reasons why I was saying that, that you should actually like the stuff that I'm trying to talk about today.
Oh, I like it. I didn't understand it, but I like it.
Well, yeah.
I understand it maybe now, but we'll see.
Okay.
So slowly through this example. Yeah.
So yeah, somehow it's going to be important that in the case of Z mod 3. So sorry, back in the real case, did you have a name for those three different kinds of? I mean, the three different division algebra. Did you have the names for the three different kinds of things?
Representation.
Majorana and blah blah blah. Or
no, just real complex and quaternionic. They usually call them representations because they usually think about two rigs of representations. But you could call them real complex and quaternionic objects if you wanted, I guess.
Okay. Well, so in this case, we have, like I said, we have many more different flavors than just those three flavors. So in particular, we have, in this Z mod 3 case, we have two flavors: vanilla and Eisenstein. And then in the Z mod 4 case, I know what we'll have in the Z mod 4 case. We'll probably have two sort of vanilla flavors. Maybe we'll call them vanilla and chocolate. And then we'll have the Gauss flavor, I think. I think that's what happens. I didn't really think about the quartic case here. But
yeah, that sounds right. So you have got 1 and -1, which are in the rationals, and then you got I and -I, which are only in the Gaussians. That is, they're not in the rationals, but they're in the Gaussians. And
yeah, something like that. But
we're going through the fourth roots of unity and checking them out.
But let's try to avoid the fun stuff for the moment. Let's stick with the quadratic case where we don't just have vanilla and chocolate, or 1 and -1. Okay, and so well, and we can sketch out the whole theory in this case, right? We could say that this is actually this little syntactic category here as a theory in the doctrine. It's the theory of, hope I'm saying this more or less correctly, the theory of a line object together with an isomorphism from its tensor square to the tensor unit. In other words, together with the trivialization of its tensor square. Trivialization meaning an isomorphism to the tensor unit. In this case, I guess that's what that means.
So you're describing the representations of Z mod 2 in terms of sort of.
Yes, and this is all over the rationals as a base.
Generators and relations.
Categorified generators and relations.
Yeah, categorified. Yeah. Yep.
And again, I'm not going to talk about the belief method today, but you can use the belief method, and the believers turn out to be these representations.
Okay.
And so that means we can say what the since we have a nice explicit sketch of the theory, we can say nice and explicitly what the models of the theory are. And and then this, so there's some there's like some funny tricks that you can do in this case. Like, right, let's think of relatively classical models of this theory. And that's actually a I'm using that in a technical sense, relatively classical models. So that means models over, so these models are functors, these associated vector bundle functors, but they are landing in rational vector spaces.
Okay.
So yeah, classical models of that theory, well, relatively classical models of theory, relative to the base that we're working over, which is the rational numbers. Right. So it's right. So it's like it's it's the theory of a line object equipped with a trivialization of its tensor square. Did I remember to say that correctly? That the trivialization is not just a property. It's not just a property of being trivial. It's the structure of having this trivialization.
Mm-hmm.
But then something interestingly funny happens in this case of the relatively classical model. So what am I trying to say? That, I mean, right, in general, line objects can be line bundles, like, if you're taking variable models of them. But here we're taking these relatively classical models. So they're living over a field. They're living over the field of rational numbers. So, there's no interesting variation in the line objects here. They're all just copies of the unit object. They don't have God-given normalizations, but they are just copies of the unit object. So I mean, these are one-dimensional vector spaces.
Yep.
So we're saying, what are we saying? We're saying that this is like a one-dimensional vector space equipped with a trivialization of its tensor square. So so let's try to figure out what the category or groupoid of those models is like. So what am I trying to say? Trying to say that, like, we have like a line bundle L. Sorry, is that right? A line bundle L, and its tensor square is equipped with a trivialization. So it's an invertible morphism to the tensor unit. And
When you say line bundle, you really mean vector space now?
did I say line bundle?
Yeah, you did. You did. Yeah.
Right. I guess right. Well, maybe I should say line object. I'm trying to talk syntactically in the syntactic,
Okay.
but right. But in a moment, we're going to try thinking concretely where, but okay. So, so we have, right. So it is going to be just a one-dimensional vector space. And right. And this trivialization should have a name. We'll call it T for trivialization. But now I'm trying to understand what this is like as a category. So, I'm considering having another model of the theory. I guess maybe I should call it L prime, tensor squared, and T prime, so the tensor unit. And now, the doctrine kind of tells you what the morphisms between the models are. So, I mean, it would be, you'd have some linear operator from L to L prime, which maybe we call A or something like that. But we're supposed to take the tensor square of that. And over here, we've got the 0th tensor power on the right-hand side. So that's just, the 0th tensor power of A. That's just 1.
Yep.
So in other words, that right-hand side really just squashes down to it, make it a triangle rather than a.
Yep.
Whereas the left-hand side is like.
Yep.
So you can see what I'm saying, that the classification of these classification of the models of this theory. It is, did I screw up? It's the, I'm hoping it's going to be something very much like the square free integer.
Oh, wow. Let's see, I wasn't ready for that. So if I secretly pretend that L just as an object is the field. so
Yes,
gauge fixing choice.
exactly. I'm very annoyed that you said gauge fixing before I did, because that's what we're doing.
I love it.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I've heard you many times. So
Yes.
anyway, I'm the physicist. So so anyway, so then that T. Wait a minute.
I mean, that gauge fixing idea, that's going to be really important and interesting in the ensuing discussion, allegedly, supposedly, if it works out. Go ahead, yeah?
So then L tensor squared just is the unit. I mean, it's equal to the unit. And so then T is just a rational number, multiplication by a rational number. And then you're saying that two of those rational numbers count as equivalent or isomorphic if they differ by multiplication by the square of some invertible rational number, which is this A. And so if you want to pick representatives of rationals, mod squares of rationals, mod squares of invertible rationals, mod squares of invertible rationals, then you get the square free integers as a good set of representatives.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's correct.
Yeah, that's right. Wow. Okay. No, I hadn't really noticed this, or hadn't expected that this is going to be what was going to happen for some.
Yeah. And like if instead of taking the completely or the relatively classical models, and it's taking, these things over Q, if we took them over some, finite degree extension of Q, then we would get an answer which wasn't exactly like the square free integers, but it would be, we would get some sort of answer. We could figure out what it was.
So it'd be like the invertible elements of the field mod the invertible elements of the field squared.
Yes.
I think I've seen people in number theory books talk about that group a bunch.
Yeah, right. And I'm thinking that it's like a second cohomology group or something like that. And that, thinking of it as thinking of those elements of that group, thinking of them as two cocycles, it really is, this gauge fixing really is like thinking of Czechish two cocycles with respect to a locally trivial covering. I don't know. But I didn't say any of that the right way yet, but we are going to try and do stuff like that. So yeah, the point is, as you say, I think people are going to talk about right. I'm hoping we do determine that how to say that is some kind of cohomology group. Maybe it's a Galois cohomology group. I don't know. But it's going to have one thing you didn't say out loud yet, I don't think, is that should have the interpretation, the conceptual interpretation of being the quadratic extensions of those extensions. If you have one of those extensions, and if you take the quadratic extensions of that, if I didn't screw up, should be classified by those things that you just described. These. Say it again. Elements of elements of GL1 modulo squares or something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
They'd write like case. Just for jargon purpose, they write like K star, like the multiplicative group of K star mod K star squared. I've seen that expression thrown around.
Okay.
They might, more fancy ones might say the G sub M, some kind of multiplicative group scheme.
Yeah, by the way, it annoys me that I'm talking about this thing that's, I mean, didn't we say out loud that this cohomology group, it's sort of like an X group, but it feels more like a Tor group or something like that, or it's related to a Tor group in some way. Are there all sorts of relationships between X-like things and Tor-like things that I'm supposed to know about? I don't know.
It's not,
Again, that's just a random side comment, the random digression. What were you going to say?
okay. I won't comment on that because I think that'll lure us.
Well, now I'm really
I was
curious
going
to
to
hear
say
about
that,
that.
like,
Yeah.
I don't even really see why this is like a cohomology group, except that I know that it
Well, I may tell you
could
more
be
about
like
that.
a second cohomology group because it's classifying some kind of line bundly thing.
Yes, but I think we will see some more concrete ways in which it's like a second.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not at all surprised.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, again,
I've seen a bunch of,
yeah.
I'm trying to learn very slowly, trying to learn Galois cohomology. And so this is, sounds like the kind of thing they would say, but I don't, for some reason, know what the cochains are and what the cocycles are and what the coboundaries are. Making that work out like that. Yeah.
So I would count it as a big success in getting across my central message for today if you managed to take everything we just did and then really think semi-deeply about how we would adapt that to the case of Z mod 3 instead of Z mod 2. Because then, including how to incorporate in a semi-deep way this extra complication about the idea that we will have these non-trivial commutative division algebras showing up in the Z mod 3 case, in particular, the Eisenstein integers as a commutative division algebra in playing its role in the Brouwer or whatever your thing you said.
Let's see, why in this stuff underneath the big horizontal line? Where in that, if at all, did we use the fact that all the irreducible representations of Z mod 2 have the same endomorphism division algebra? That is, where did we use anything about what if anything did we just do that wouldn't work for if you scratched out all those 2s and wrote 3s?
Well, these wouldn't be line objects anymore. It's very convenient just having line objects there because line objects are so easy to deal with in these stuff.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, yeah.
We would have to deal with the theory of a two-dimensional object or something like that.
Yeah, okay, right.
So GL2 instead of GL1 or something like that.
Okay, right.
So I mean, there should be various things that you can do to deal with the situation, but it's not as straightforward as what you do in the Z mod 2 case.
Okay.
So so right, I really want to think about that Z mod 3 case, but even if we don't quite get enough time to do that today, that's a big theme, maybe even the big intended theme for today. Just because it's intended doesn't mean that we're going to actually get it. But let's say more about how this is working syntactically. So I mean, we said this in a very numerological way or a very decategorified way. We just I mean, we sort of casually know that these square free integers are, it's very plausible that they're classifying the quadratic extensions of the rational numbers. And we just convinced ourselves that, that's also parameterizing the models of this theory. But we didn't
Mhm.
we didn't do this in a more categorified way. We didn't really figure out how to extract a thing from this, extract a quadratic extension from this.
Or yeah, or also how to extract one of these things from a quadratic extension.
Exactly.
So
Right.
you hand me a quadratic extension, I should be able to like
That's right.
cook up one of these.
Exactly. And vice versa. And do you want to
Right.
take any guesses about that, or you just want me to tell you stuff about it? And which direction do you want to guess that?
Well, in the direction you were proposing, we can,
Yeah.
I mean, so like we have a way to do it that's really obnoxious, where you say like, you pick this, you pick this square free representative
Yeah.
of this class of T's, and then you form the you form Q adjoin the square root of that. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
then
right.
that's like a really lame answer.
Right. Lame.
And so you can try to
Sure.
gradually de-lamify it.
Yeah, I'm also trying to think of the right words for lame here, like ad hoc, decategorified, logical. I can't think of the right.
Right. Yeah, but it's sort of, well, it's just because like, yeah, I think of it as just lame because it's like, you know what?
All right, lame. I'll start thinking about
told
using
you you
lame
have
as an
to,
insult. Yeah, go ahead.
the teacher told you you have to do this integral, and you just like make up steps that get you to the integral or somehow.
Right.
But okay, so one wants to like something more. Okay, so let me. So I mean, to de-lamify things, you need to probably like think about what quadratic extensions of rational numbers really are, in some maybe in some way that's better than saying, oh, you just pick some particular number and you take its square root and you throw it in there, because that's think about it that way, you're forced into picking this representative, but you want to think of it more holistically. Are the quadratic so I don't know, are the quadratic extensions of the rationals, how similar are they to the extensions of the rationals that have a Galois group of Z mod 2?
Yeah, that's kind of the same. Well, again, there was that. I maybe I wasn't listening carefully enough to see if you said, if the two things that you said were exactly the same. I mentioned there was this thing that I was talking about, the torsors, and there's the trivial torsor, which is semi-simple rather than being a simple, right? A field extension is a simple extension, but these torsors, in the quadratic case, there's just one way you can fail to be simple and still be semi-simple or something like that. But right, it's like I say, it's like this non-transitive action of the Galois group or something like that. Again, I'm being annoyingly sloppy about that, but
so do you want to include that? Do you want that, or do you want to not? You want to not?
I have a feeling you could say it either way, and I'm just stumbling over what's the best way to say it. I'm hoping to just sweep that under the carpet, not worry about that too much, especially in this quadratic case where it sort of doesn't matter too much. I know, as usual, I'm being very bad about this, but sorry.
Okay. Well, anyway, so after all that, it sounds like I shouldn't worry about it. Okay.
No, well, I mean, I think it would be fun for you to hear my answer, but you can also just try to take a guess, but maybe you think I'm not playing fair enough to let you take a guess or something like that.
No, I don't.
Well,
I'll let you say. I mean, I would have.
Well, I think I suggested starting with this model and then using it to get the field extension or the torsor or something like that. But then I think you commented on going the other direction. I think I like your idea of going in the other direction. So let's say, for example, you have a quadratic extension field of the rationals. And you also said something, maybe you really were sort of answering these questions. You
Let's
also
try.
said something about, is this the same thing as having a thing that has Galois group Z mod 2? Yeah, if you say it right, it is. Yeah. So you've got this, yeah, you've got this quadratic extension, and that's basically the same thing as having this quadratic extension with this Galois symmetry, this Galois involution. And in the case where it's, a square root of a negative thing, that will basically secretly just be complex conjugation, if you think about it.
Yep.
And in the case where it's square root of a positive thing, it's not quite as photogenic as that. Maybe there's some other different photogenic way to visualize it, but maybe not. Maybe it's less visualizable or something like that. But still, like it's like the golden mean and the inverse golden mean. They don't look very similar, but they actually are algebraically indiscernible from each other.
Right.
Yeah, so right. I mean, you practically did almost give the answer. I mean, how would you?
You do the rest then.
All right. So going in the direction that you were talking about, starting with this extension, so you've got the Galois group axiom. So you just take the, and that's an involution. So you just take the eigenspaces of that. So, you get the real axis and the imaginary axis. Again, I'm doing at the moment, I'm doing the imaginary quadratic case. So, like the real axis is the trivial rep of Z mod 2, Z mod 2. And the imaginary axis is the non-trivial rep of Z mod 2.
Sorry, so what do we get? What are you trying to get back now? It sounds like you just got back as a Z2 graded vector space.
That's right. That's right. I got a Z mod 2 graded vector space, but including, right? I mean, you could see that the non-trivial grade. Notice that, right? It is included with a trivialization of its tensor. It is equipped with a trivialization of its tensor square, just by the multiplication from inside this field.
Okay. So then you get this T thing that you're trying to get here. This T from
Yes. And again, T is, oh, that's T thing, yes. Yes. Okay, sorry, I was getting mixed up with a different T. Yes, that's right, that T thing. But I thought you were going to say that we get this, right? I mean, this graded vector, this Z mod 2 graded vector space, where both grades are one-dimensional, that secretly is this associated vector bundle functor. That is the torsor. So you see what I'm saying? Right? This is the philosophy that says that these two ways of thinking are really morally equivalent to each other in a very nice way. So,
sorry, which two things?
The torsor thought of in a geometric way, as a principal fiber bundle, versus the associated vector bundle functor. I mean, right? Well, okay. So we're saying that the extension field forget that it's a field. Just think of it as a vector space over the base field, and one that's acted on by the Galois group. And it, by Fourier analysis with respect to that, well, something like some kind of Fourier analysis with respect to that action of the Galois group, it decomposes into these sectors. One sector corresponding to each irrep of,
Mhm.
and so you see what I'm saying? Like, I mean, these are like Galois representations, and they are the sectors of the corresponding extension field. And right, there's one corresponding to each irrep of the. So, right, what we're sort of saying here is we're saying that the extension field extension, extension field extension. I don't understand how this terminology works. This extension field is like a twisted version of the group algebra of the Galois group. And that itself is sort of like the trivial torsor or something like that. So every torsor is a twisted version of the trivial torsor or something like that.
Well, somehow when you put it that way, then
yeah,
the cohomological description of it starts sounding.
That's right. That's right.
I know that like twisted group algebras
exactly
are classified by second cohomology.
That's exactly right. That's what's going on here. So every field extension like this, well, every quadratic field extension like this, certainly to begin with. That's right. Every quadratic field extension like that. So, you know, for example, the complex numbers has a quadratic extension of the reals. Right. So, so how much have you thought about that? How much have you and I talked about this a long time ago? So, I mean, if you're really saying that that's a two cohomology class, where is the group extension? That's right. All these extension words are bugging me the way they're all lying on top of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, something backwards and forwards. But the right, the two co-cycle, right? The purpose in life of two co-cycles is group two co-cycles is to give you group extensions. You know, these carry digit functions. They're these carry digit functions.
So I think in this case,
so where is that hidden in the field extension? Sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I think it's an extension in the usual backwards way they say it. It's an extension of the Galois group by the multiplicative group of the field. I think that's
yeah, that's right. That's right. In that backwards way. That's right. That's right. And moreover, it is sort of formed by taking the. Does this make sense? I want to say again, I'm pretending. Well, maybe I'm doing the Z mod 2 case, or maybe I'm pretending that we can get away with, for the moment, thinking that in the general cyclic case that it still breaks up into one-dimensional irreps, whereas we know that, you know, over the rationals that doesn't work for Z mod 3 already. But but I'm trying to say that it's some right, or don't just stick to the Z mod 2 case for a moment. So you have these two axes, the sort of real axis and the other one, which certainly in the imaginary case we can call it the imaginary axis, but maybe even in the non-imaginary case, maybe we can still call that the imaginary axis.
Sure, why not? Yeah.
And that cross, perhaps with its nexus removed, is that group extension that you're talking about, I think. So it's right, it's the elements of it's the set of axes that is the quotient group. And each axis is parameterized by the elements of the multiplicative group or something like that. As I say, with the nexus removed or something like that. So I think it's something like that. I mean, I didn't think this all the way through, but it seems to be something like that, is what we're saying here.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, we even got to the Galois cohomology. I mean, well,
maybe.
Well, I think we did. I don't know how to. We got the explanation of like why.
Yeah.
Why? Well, we didn't put all the pieces together, but we.
Yeah, the last piece.
We are now in the position. Yeah. Well, I meant, sorry, I was talking about a limited set of pieces here. But
okay.
But the pieces to show the following thing. We basically sort of showed that, like, if you. I mean, we assembled the ingredients to show that the second cohomology of the Galois group with coefficients in the multiplicative group of our field.
Yeah.
In this very quadratic case, we showed that that's the same. Sorry, we showed that an element of that cohomology group, the 2 cocycle, must somehow be the same thing as a square-free integer.
Yes. Yes.
So, and we would just need to like think about all the stuff we said, and we'd like see that that was clear. It's not quite clear in my mind because it was like a long chain of conversation, but that's what it got us.
Right, right. And you may have to watch this video again because you don't have notes from,
Exactly. Yeah, so I don't have any notes. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, right. I think we're right. We actually are sort of doing okay right now. And in fact, well, again, in some sense, I want to pretend that we really understand a whole lot of what we just talked about in the quadratic case. And then I really want to think about some of the complications that happen in the cubic case, and then relate this to like things like understanding how much more difficult, how much more involved is it trying to understand cubic reciprocity compared to quadratic reciprocity, and in particular this. So people talk about like maybe for some reason I associate with Baez, W-E-I-L or something like that.
Say that again.
Did I totally mispronounce it? I hear some people pronounce his name Baez. I don't know why they pronounce it that way. W-E-I-L.
Oh, they. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
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 Is that a German pronunciation of a
That's a French pronunciation.
French pronunciation of a German name of a German
or a French name. W-E-I-L, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is there a V sound? It sounds to me like a V sound.
There is. Maybe
it has nothing to do with any German interference or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I'm confused why it's a V. Yeah.
Okay, I have no idea. I have no idea. I have no idea. I shouldn't bring this up at all. I shouldn't bring this up at all.
I mean, the French is to blame for the fact that they're not saying the L at the end.
Oh, sure.
And then maybe to blame for.
I have no idea. But the reason I brought them up was that maybe I've seen something called quadratic reciprocity over an arbitrary or almost arbitrary field attributed to them.
I don't know.
I'm not sure, but right. I mean, it seems, unless we screwed up somehow, it seems like we should be close to expressing quadratic reciprocity over an arbitrary field. If we did this correct, then we should be able to do this.
Because 1 and -1 are always in any field, and so nothing we did was limited to the rationals. Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole thing about, as you said, mounting out by the squares, that it sounds like, I mean, we didn't even get to the part about the reciprocity, but I still think it should somehow work. Yeah,
I mean, what we did was the Galois classification of quadratic extensions.
Right. I'm right. I was being very sloppy about it, but I'm claiming that if you know how to classify those quadratic extensions, then that should somehow mesh with the quadratic reciprocity rules. I forget exactly how that should work, but something like that. But so there's that idea, of quadratic reciprocity over an arbitrary field. But of course, that raises the question of, then what about cubic reciprocity over an arbitrary field? And normally, I think, cubic reciprocity, and the way I learned it was in this kind of lame way that cubic reciprocity, you only really try to even do it when over the Eisenstein integers, because it's really easy there. But now I'm thinking that, we really should try to do cubic reciprocity in a much more general setting. And, so it wouldn't be about cubes of numbers in general. It'd be about these abelian cubic extensions or something like that in the general setting. And presumably this is or the standard way of doing it. But you know what I'm saying? It should be sort of fun to do this. And right, maybe another one of the semi-punchlines that I forgot to say is that if we really follow all these ideas far enough, and it shouldn't be that far, it shouldn't be that difficult, then it seems like this should be one way to understand like all of the general abelian reciprocity laws, which maybe is summed up in art and reciprocity or something like that, but incorporates, you know, all these other kinds of abelian reciprocity things. So, I mean, that's another goal. This is yet another way to try to learn art and reciprocity by, you know, it sort of, like I say, it sort of seems like if we can do this Z mod 3 case, then it should be, that should be general enough that we should be able to understand all of art and reciprocity. If this is the right track, if we're not too badly off the right track in this approach. But, you know, I'm hoping that when we try to understand it
sounds right. Another thing that one could do that would be like easier would be to say, I'm going to study degree n abelian extensions, but I'm only going to do it over the nth cyclotomic field. So I'll
yes, absolutely, yes, and again, that's the very easy thing.
Process that you said that you saw for the, but they were only did it over the Eisenstein.
Yes, and I have actually, I actually did a whole bunch of ridiculous computer calculations with that a while ago, and it seemed to work out very easily. Again, because it's such a cheating approach. But there really is fun stuff about, you know, doing it in the non-cheating way. And like I say, I think that I think that you know, this if we put all this together, there should be enough to give us a general way of understanding art and reciprocity. So, and again, historically, I have no idea what's going on here, but so like art and reciprocity, that's supposed to be some very general abelian reciprocity law. And one interpretation of reciprocity laws is that they're just telling you the splitting patterns, the patterns of when primes split over, you know, over abelian extensions in the case of abelian reciprocity laws. And so there's art and reciprocity, but there's also this thing that I read about somewhere called Kummer theory, which is allegedly about the general Galois theory of cyclic extensions or something like that. And now that I think I'm getting a feeling for what's going on, it almost sounds to me like those two should be almost the same thing. I mean, you know, general cyclic stuff should be like about the same as general abelian stuff or something like that. And so I get historically confused. I get confused in my understanding of history in terms of, you know, what's the relationship between Artin's attachment to this stuff, the attachment of Artin's name to this stuff, and the attachment of Kummer's name to this stuff. And then there's also the attachment of Jacobi's name to this stuff. But maybe I have a vague guess about that. You know, that people talk about the Jacobi symbol and stuff like that. And I think that might be what you were talking about the cyclotomic thing, working over the cyclotomic field and then taking the nth powers or something like that. Yeah, it might be something like nth power reciprocity laws or something like that. But I'm saying this, maybe my stupid guess was that the Jacobi reciprocity wasn't really designed for generalizing to working over an arbitrary base. Whereas maybe Kummer theory and art and reciprocity are supposed to work over an arbitrary base. So they're like more advanced or something like that. I'm not sure. I'm just taking stupid guesses about how the historical terminology works. So, okay, what was I trying to get to here? Well, right, I was sort of happy that we still have a little bit of time left and that we actually maybe can do some of the fun stuff.
Sure,
so,
yeah.
Yes, and again, what the fun stuff means is for us to try to relearn some of the lessons that we've just learned, but try to relearn them in this Z mod 3 case and maybe see some fun stuff going on.
Okay.
So what's my vague idea now? So. Well, so right, the idea is now that we're going to have one of these abelian cubic extensions. And, you know, if we were doing this relative to the Eisenstein integers or something, where Z mod 3 splits, then we would just get 3 one-dimensional sectors. But we're not doing that. We're working over the rationals for the moment. So we're going to get it to split into just a one-dimensional sector and a two-dimensional sector. And the two-dimensional sector is, like I say, it seems like it's going to be something like a module of the Eisenstein integers or something like that. So, right. So one of the things I'm looking for is one of the things I'd like to have here is I'd like to have, you know, the cubic analog of this thing for the square free integers. So it's not going to be as, you know, shrunk down as that, but I want to see what we can get it down to, you know, you know, saying that the classification of these.
So maybe the one-dimensional
guy
is somehow connected to cube-free integers. I was wanting to say earlier, cube-free integers, just like some naive.
Yeah, I think there is something. I can't remember whether that's the correct analog, but there is something like that.
Because if we just drew this chart that you're staring at here, but
when you said the one-dimensional one, did you mean looking at the one-dimensional one and ignoring the two-dimensional one, or did you mean working over the Eisenstein integers so that all of the things are one-dimensional?
No, I meant the former.
The former. Okay, go ahead.
So that is like you get some cubic extensions from cube-free integers, and those will be those I'm having trouble saying it, but the whole analysis below the line here in your chart here, if you just like wrote 3s instead of 2s, you'd get an analysis that would like involve cube-free integers instead of square-free integers. And I just feel that would just like only be enough to cover the cubic extensions that are of the form rationals adjoin the cube of a.
I could easily be really confused, but I have the vague feeling that you might have some duality mistake in there. I'm not sure, but my vague idea was that there really is going to be something about cube free or something like that. I think cube free might be exactly the right thing. Right, and these somehow when we learn about modules and stuff or something like that, these cube free things are going to like form a vector space over it. The 3-element field, and those square free things are going to form a vector space over the 2-element field. I'm not sure exactly what to do with that yet, but that's going to work out somehow. But what am I trying to say? That it sounded to me like you were saying that the cube free stuff is going to help only for a limited class of extensions over an arbitrary base or something like that. But I thought it was going to be the other way around. I thought it was going to be something like that cube free stuff is going to be really important and the right thing to do, but it's only going to work. It's going to work for general cubic extensions, but only over a base that's already got the cube roots of unity in it.
I agree with the second part you said, but I was imagining just working over the rationals where cube-free extension, cube-free integers would, I think, not be sufficient to understand all the cubic abelian extensions. But I still think they'd like help you understand part of what was going on in the rational case. And
there's a lot of things here I'm really confused about.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, is
well,
there
maybe I should let you go ahead and
you
were going to do something.
I mean, I'm taking some wild guesses at this point. I'm getting confused. I don't know what the answers to to those questions of yours. It's more like I want to try and jump in and try something sort of like a calculation or some vague idea that I have. But I have some vague, what am I trying to say? I have some vague idea that there might be, some congruence patterns here that are relevant to what you're saying, that there could be something about what you're saying might work for cube. Did you say about cube roots at all? I mean, I know you said something about cube free, but something about cube.
I said like there are like a whole bunch of extensions that are like you would join a cube root.
Yes.
A cube free integer.
I have the vague feeling, I could be on the wrong track, but I have a feeling that there might be a difference between what happens when you join a cube root of something that's, equal to 1 mod 6 versus when you join a cube root of something that's equal to 5 mod 6 or something like that. I'm not sure that's on the right track either. Yeah, and I don't even want to think about that right now. Instead, I just want to think, got like 10 minutes left. I want to sketch out some vague ideas about possibly interesting stuff that might happen in the Z mod 3 case that really has to do with the idea that there's this two-dimensional irrep. So it is higher dimensional, but it's still got a commutative endomorphism algebra rather than a. Yeah. So let's see. So what am I trying to say here? What's my vague idea? This might be very sketchy. We've only got 10 minutes. I'll just don't expect this part to make too much sense. We already made a lot of progress in getting things to make sense. Let me make some stupid guesses here. And maybe we can eventually make sense out of it later. So what am I trying to say? What am I trying to say here? Don't tell me. Let me think about it. What am I trying to say? I want to say something like what? All right. Let's see. So right. So if we have one of these abelian cubic extensions, one of these things with Z mod 3 acting on it as Galois group, then like I say, it Fourier analysis or something cuts that up into a one-dimensional sector and a two-dimensional sector. And we want to understand what is this structure on this one-dimensional sector and on this two-dimensional sector. Well, so right, there's something, right? The one-dimensional sector is just, right? That's corresponding to the trivial irrep. So it's like very trivial, you know what I mean? It's like, right, I mean, what am I trying to say? That like, when you're talking about these twisted group algebras, we often normalize the two cocycles, right? Which means that like for when we're writing the structure constants for the, how do you write structure constants for like the complex numbers as a group algebra? So it's like 1 and I and 1. Am I doing this right? And then you write 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times I is I times 1 is I. And then this is the funny one here, something like that. You know what I mean? There's this whole, right? There's this whole trivial row that is just, sort of like the unit.
Yeah.
It's because of the normalization of the cocycle.
Right.
We're not fiddling with the unit thing at all.
Right. Right. Yep.
So now I'm doing something like that. Only now I've got like, what am I trying to say? It's got,
Bigger, yeah.
we've got like the one-dimensional trivial irrep, which I'll name as 0. And there's the two-dimensional irrep, which I'll call like 1, 2, right? Because this is sort of like what it would split into if it did split, right? It would split into the, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sort of. I thought you were going to do a twisted group algebra, and then it'd be like a 3x3 matrix. But I guess anyway, you can make it be that like what it does for G, it also determines what it does for G inverse. It's like some other kind of normalization. So anyway.
Well, what I'm saying is that, because we've got higher dimensional irreps, higher meaning not just one dimensional, we're sort of then like in a vaguely branching rules situation, Klebsch-Gordon situation or something like that. So, I mean,
okay.
So first I'm sort of drawing, before I try and twist it, I'm trying to draw the untwisted thing. So the sort of Klebsch-Gordon rules or something like, what am I trying to say? I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. So 0 tends to 0 is 0 or something like that. 0 tends to 1, 2 is 1, 2. But 1, 2, just 1, 2, it's kind of like,
It's 4-dimensional. So it's
yeah, but I have so much trouble with it. It's something like,
I think it's gonna be like 0 plus 0 plus 1,
0,
2.
direct sum, 0, direct sum,
1, 2.
1, 2. And one of those zeros is like the one of this one and plus the 2 of this one. The other one, the 2 of this one plus the 1 of this one.
Right.
And then
you're doing
1, 2
addition.
is like something like the diagonal. Does that make any sense in this context? I don't know. I'm confused.
Yeah, you're doing like addition in multi-sets of Z mod 3. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But I'm not sure what I'm doing here. And so, okay, don't tell me. I mean, you might be dying to tell me stuff. I don't know, but let me struggle here just a little bit, unless you really want to interrupt or something. What am I trying to say? I want to say that when we start twisting these things, well, like I say, we're not going to twist
Right.
the only part we're going to, in this case, the only part we're going to have twisting is right there. I mean,
Right.
when we start getting to, Z mod 17, Z mod 16, and stuff like that, then we really will have not just a single square that's being,
Right. Yeah.
but for now,
Yeah, so your claim that if once we understand Z mod 3, then we're like, from then on, it's a straight shot.
something like that.
Very optimistic, but okay.
Yes. Yes. So, what am I trying to say? Don't tell me. Let me think. So it's like, what am I trying to say? Okay. So one of the things we could do is we can remember that this is supposed to be a commutative thing.
Uh-huh.
And that means that one of these zeros is irrelevant. I don't know which one is irrelevant, but one of them is irrelevant.
Right. Well, it doesn't matter which one. You can
It's not
know one if you know the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something like that. So let's cross out one of these. And now what am I trying to say?
So I had some theory that like,
Yeah.
you never, when you're doing these cocycles, you can always, I don't know if this is true, but you can like always assume that the cocycle is trivial on G and G inverse. That is, you never should twist, you don't gain anything for, I don't know why I think this, but I think I've heard you don't gain anything by every cocycle is cohomologous to one where it's trivial on every 2 cocycles cohomologous to one that's trivial on G and G inverse. I don't know why I think that.
I wonder if that's true only with some glaring exception involving Z mod 2 or something like that, where
okay, we'll forget that. Well, okay.
I mean, I don't know. I could be confused about
well, okay,
it does make sense somehow.
I was trying to, yeah, okay, that's probably bullshit, but I was just trying to.
No, it could be true. It could be something that's away from.
Doesn't sound nearly as convincing anymore. Like in the one case when we actually understand it, it's false. But
Well, but I mean, it also seems dangerous in this Z mod 3 case, because again,
I was hoping we could let us get rid of the other 0 there. That is to say, like, don't bother twisting that one. That's was my. But it's just wild guess, and it doesn't seem so convincing.
yeah,
to
I
me.
don't know. I don't know. But
But okay, so maybe we need to data for our 2 cocycle.
now I'm struggling to remember what my rules were that I was guessing like yesterday and the day before. Maybe it was something like that because I have this here, that means one piece of datum in this generalized mutant 2 cocycle is going to be, by the way, this reminds me of all sorts of things, right? This reminds me of, I mean, the way we're doing the gauge fixing, it's like a trade-off between skeletalization and
Strictification.
Yeah. And that reminds me of things that I never really learned, but things you were telling me about Rakov, Wigner, and Rowden, Hart, Elliott, or something like that, where you had, again, it all reminds me of, and Klebs Gordon, what?
Yeah, 6J symbols for like, that's for like associators, but anyway.
Right, but it's still vaguely related to, this philosophy or something. I don't know, I'm getting vague connection flickers. But so what am I trying to say? That I think this is telling us that the one piece of datum should be an ordinary rational number. And this other one is maybe telling us, if we do the gauge fixing thing, this is telling us that the second piece of data should be an Eisenstein rational. And then, we have to sort of get a cocycle condition by, from the associativity, right? I mean, we use just the commutativity we just used to get rid of one of these zeros, but we still have the associativity. And so do you see what I'm saying, right? We're getting some sort of, it feels like we're getting some sort of generalized mutant version of cocycles, but one that, really has good reason for people to have already studied it. So I don't want to know what the name for any of this stuff is, but it seems like it should have been studied before. And so right, we could work out the, just like there's this whole combinatorics of cocycles and stuff. There's not sure combinatorics is the exact right word, but it's this algorithmics of how the gauge fixing works, and I'm still confused about different possible degrees of gauge fixing that we might use here. But and also, so maybe I'm sort of running out of things to, not only am I running out of things to say, I'm also running out of time in which to say them. Well,
that's good.
It sounds good, but it's not actually good. It's actually like the worst possible.
Because you should have more things to say and more time to say.
Right. Yeah. All right, but I think that means I need to go home and think more about this. But I don't know. Did you get any sense of what I was trying to do here? With this. In this last fumbling around 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'll say that.
Go ahead.
I really think that somehow it should be about Galois cohomology. And so I think, although you're like saying it's like a mutant 2 cocycle, I have a feeling that it's.
I mean, it's mutant because we're trying to use the Fourier dual, and the Fourier dual is not just a group, because we have these higher dimensional representations. I'm not sure what I'm saying, but I
feel that it should boil down to just studying the second cohomology of Z mod 3 with rational coefficients. No, do I believe that? That's what I think.
I mean, it could be that I'm doing it the wrong way, and there will be something that will work out like what you're saying. But and again, I don't know if I'm thinking that what I'm doing doesn't sound exactly like what I thought Galois cohomology was. But maybe it is. Maybe what I'm doing is called Galois cohomology or something. I don't know. But there's lots of fun stuff here to try to figure out, try to reinvent. And again, part of the purpose of trying to reinvent this stuff is to use it for purposes of reinventing art and reciprocity, and then a whole bunch of other stuff.
Mhm.
Is there anything else we should do before we quit today?
Nope. Yeah, no, I really like this stuff, so I just vote for you can coming up with more stuff about this or telling me more stuff that you had already come up with.
Yeah,
about this.
I'll try to do that. That's the direction I'm going in at the moment. I hope it keeps up for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so but thanks a lot.
Okie doke.
I'll see you.
Yep. See ya. It's great.
Okay, bye.